they need to.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Todd Hibbs, Director of Athletics here at Hiram College, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this evening's student-athlete panel that we've entitled Hope and Action. The purpose of today's panel is to continue our campus conversations about anti-racism by incorporating the voices of student-athletes, our largest affinity group on campus. We know that our athletes on many levels have great influence, and certainly their voices are needed in higher education. Our goal tonight is to have a great dialogue that will lead to a range of ideas and even concrete actions that can contribute to an anti-racist culture on campus and in society in general. Our athletes are very diverse. They represent all sorts of backgrounds, gender, race, social class, economics, political viewpoints, and more. So we're very excited to have student-athlete panelists who embody various voices and perspectives on this important subject. We've asked each to share openly, honestly, and due to time limitations, to be brief yet succinct in their responses. My co-facilitator, Dee West, and I will pose questions, and in some cases, we may follow up with some clarifying thoughts or additional questions. Again, we welcome you. I would like to point out before turning it over to Dee that if you're looking for closed captioning this evening, you can tap in the upper right corner on the live feature, and that you should use the chat box during our panel tonight to submit questions or comments. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Dee.
Thank you, Todd. So as was mentioned, if you attended the program that just happened prior to this one, we know our charge. We know that we have a lot of work to do in our society, not just on our campus, but everywhere in society to advance anti-racism. These are complicated issues. It's very difficult to talk about them sometimes, but the voices of our students matter most because this is your institution and we want you to feel that you have a voice in it, and also that we have a social responsibility. According to the mission of Hiram, we are trying to prepare ourselves to face the challenges of the time. And so in many aspects of how we engage, and not only if we treat each other well, but are we doing something to advance the issues around social justice and social injustice to make a difference in society. So today we want to have this conversation as another part of the MLK conversation, the DMW conversation, the Vivian Sandlin conversation. Everyone's having this conversation because we all have a role in it and a voice in it. So we're facing a lot in the coming days. We know that. A lot are rumored and a lot of things that are real time happening. And we want our community to be tooled up and ready to not retreat, not to ignore the issues, but to face them head on. And so this conversation literally came out of a dialogue that we had in the fall, no, in the spring before we left last year. And on that panel, we featured faculty and staff. And the students said, we want to speak. We want to have something to say. And so tonight we posed some questions to them. We also have an opportunity for students or anyone who wants to ask questions, as Todd mentioned in the chat box, ask any question. But they have some questions that they'll be responding to. And then we will hopefully have a rich dialogue. It's not just about questions and answers. It's about thinking and talking and communicating and trying to figure out who we are as a community and who we want to be. So I'll turn it back over to Todd, who will do the introductions. You're on mute, Todd.
Thank you. We'd like to have the panelists introduce themselves. We'll have you just jump in one by one. And if you would, please share your name, perhaps your class standing, major, what sport you're involved with or sports, and where you're from.
I guess I'll start off. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Miller. My hometown is Stowe, Ohio, and I'm currently a freshman here at Hiram College. I play for both the football and the soccer team and plan on majoring in education. I am unsure of my rank in my class right now, but I intend to become a high school history teacher as my profession.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, my name is Gage St. Leon. I am currently a junior here at Hiram College. I'm a psychology major. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm a captain here on the lacrosse team. And my intended professional career is to be a school counselor.
Thanks, Gage.
My name is Chloe Welch. I am a nursing major and I'm a sophomore. My hometown is Midland, Michigan, and I am on the cheer and stunt team, and my intended career is to be
Thank you.
Hi, my
Others?
name is Haley Thompson. Oops, sorry. My name is Haley Thompson. I am from Elk Ridge, Maryland. I'm a sophomore exercise science major, and I intend to become a physical therapist once I graduate.
Thanks, Haley.
Is there anyone else on the panel?
I know we had one more, but I think she got booted.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and maybe she'll come back. So we are going to ask questions, and the questions came from people in general, and some students have questions. Some of the questions we were asked when we did the panel in the spring. And so there's a rhyme and a reason to the questions. Perspective is very important. And so the first question that we have is about perspective. What is your racial identity, panelists? And did you grow up mostly around people that are similar to you? And we are asking all of the panelists to answer this question, but each panelist won't answer every question. But this one, we do want to know how you identify. So we could start with, let's start with Chris.
Okay, so I identify as a straight white male, but grew up with a very diverse group of people with various racial identities and backgrounds when I grow up.
Okay, thank you.
I also identify as a straight white male, and like Chris said, I also grew up with a very diverse background and friend community.
So we'll go with Chloe.
okay. I am a white female, and I grew up in a mostly white town. But there was a little bit of diversity, and as I grew up, I started to notice it more and I had more of a friendly community with a more diverse population.
Thank you. And then we'll go with Haley.
I am an African American woman, and where I grew up, it was very diverse. I grew up around every culture you could probably imagine. So, yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you. I think we're ready for question number 2. And again, like Dee said, not each question will get answered by everyone for the sake of time, but if it's one you feel compelled to jump up and answer, please do. Our next question is, how much and what type of contact do you have with people of other races or other racial groups? And is it easier or harder than it was a few years ago to make friends from other races? Why do you believe this to be the case?
Okay, so this was one of the questions that really hit home for me. And I said that I am in contact with a very large number of people of other races and different groups because it was very important to me to maintain a balanced group of friends. It is easy for me to become friends with a person of any race because I do not judge anybody and love making new friends. I find it easier the older I get to make new friends of any race because when you meet new people, you learn so much from them and can develop a better relationship and respect for one another. I just wish everyone could get along because it really does make the world a better place.
Thank you. Anyone else on this question?
I'll answer this one. So where I grew up in a very diverse community. So just as like from elementary school all the way through high school, the schools I went to in my county were the most diverse out of my entire county. So I grew up with people from various different countries, everybody with different skin colors. And when I was younger, it was a lot easier to make friends with different cultures. And it still is, but like at Hiram, it's not as diverse as where I come from. So like from my freshman year to this year, there's a little bit more diversity, but it's still not as much diversity as I'm used to. So I guess that'd be the only reason why it might be a little bit harder for me to make friends with different cultures here. But back at home, it's super diverse, so I don't have any troubles doing that at all.
Thanks, Haley. Chloe, you commented when you were introducing yourself that across some of your younger years, that this changed for you. Could you share how it was that it changed and how it was that you were open to these new meetings, new friendships across racial lines?
Yeah, when I was younger, I moved around a lot as a kid. So I went to between kindergarten and my senior year, I actually attended 8 different schools. And so when I was younger, I did live in a community that was very dominated by a white population. And in every class, there may be 1 or 2 kids of a different race or from just like that had a different culture, and the majority of us were white. So looking back, I always imagine like, wow, that must have like felt really weird for them to, I wonder if they felt alone or discriminated against. As I got older, going into high school and things like that, there was a more diverse community with more diverse beliefs. And so as I became older, I was more willing to branch out to other people. I did go to the same high school all 4 years, so I was more willing to be friends with more people because I knew that I'd have those friends for a long time. And I still talk to a lot of my friends back home. There was a group of friends from my high school who actually started a Black Lives Matter movement this past summer. And that was really cool to be a part of and stand with some of my friends since the beginning of high school with that. So as I've kind of grown in intelligence and been able to form my own opinions, I've grown to accept other people and just be more.
Thank you. I think Dee has a question.
Yeah, I do. So the next question is about stereotyping and whatnot. We were talking, this question came out of what we see as labeling that's happening now, a lot more labeling. There are people using terms like Karen to refer to white women and other offensive terms, and terminology has always been a rocky conversation to have. It's really tough to talk about labeling and how people are labeled. Oftentimes when things happen like that, people go along to get along, or they laugh about it, or it's just pervasive through social media and things like that. But we know that these things are offensive no matter what. So the question that we have is that we all have stereotypes about other races, for sure. Stereotyping is actually a normal thing. We just have to be aware when we're doing it, that we're stereotyping folks. What stereotype about your own race bothers you and why?
I guess I'll start with this question. One stereotype about the African American community that I personally don't like is that how everybody thinks it's okay for us to say the N-word. That's one word I completely hate. I don't care what color you are. I don't think you should say it at all. I understand that some people use it as like a word for like camaraderie or something, but I find that to be the most offensive word ever. It's basically if somebody said to me like, you basically call me a slave. So that's one word I don't like, and that's something that I really stand tall on, is that word should not be used by anybody, even with my own community. I just feel like it's degrading, and I don't think we should be using it as something that we should just be calling our friends. I understand, like I understand, like my own family says it. Like I understand I understand a bunch of people say it, but that's just my beliefs on that word.
Anyone else? So I'm going to follow up, Haley. So one of the things that the higher education grapples with is academic freedom. And so we do issue readings and things like that has that word in it, or faculty may say it in the classroom because they're referencing some of the material. Does anyone have, and Haley, if you do, or if anyone has a perspective on that, because that's highly debated in higher ed. And your comment was
I
no
feel
one.
as if,
Go ahead.
I feel as if from an educational standpoint, it's okay to use because you can't delete history. You can't ignore the fact that word has been used in history to degrade people. And I even personally wrote an essay about that word in high school. So, and I had to read it out to the class. So that's an instance where I had to use that word. And I've had professors here use that word, and it was an educational standpoint. I personally didn't take offense to it in that way, but I have other friends who did. But from an educational standpoint, I feel like that's a different way because you can't delete that word out of history, but you can simply just not use it again nowadays just as like a friendly statement or a degrading statement.
Does anyone else have anything on that or any of that about the stereotype or? So Kirsten Parkinson has a comment. You want to talk about it, Kirsten? I can't see you, but.
Hang on.
Okay.
There I am. So I was just going to say that I teach literature classes, and there are a lot of writers who use that word. But I would agree with Haley on this. So I can have and have had great discussions in my literature classrooms about the use of the word in works of literature and why certain authors might choose to use that word. But I think you can have those discussions without actually using the word yourself. And I wouldn't use the word myself, but I think you can have good discussions about why certain people choose to use the word in certain contexts. And there are some great Black writers of literature who do use it extensively and for certain purposes. And those are discussions worth having, I think.
Thank you. And Mariah just showed back up. I think she got a technology situation. Mariah, if you'd like to introduce yourself, because she's one of our panelists. It's hard to have a panel when they're not all together. We got Zoom that way. So Mariah,
yeah, sorry, I was having connection issues.
Thank you for coming back.
No problem. I'm Mariah. I'm a senior from Long Beach, California, and I think I already said that I'm from California, but I'm a senior on the softball team this year. So.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next question, Todd.
Sure. So some people will say that that racism is more of a generational problem from a different generation and isn't a problem for the college-age population. Have you heard that? Do you agree or disagree with this statement? And what do you see as the nature of any of today's societal racial problems? What caused them? Are they serious? Is there a difference generationally?
I would love to answer this. In my personal belief, I think that racism is taught. You do not come out of your womb racist. You are born, you're not racist. Like, it is a taught thing that is taught by parents, grandparents, or anybody that's around that child. And I think it's really heartbreaking to know that some of the older generation, they are still practicing racist things, and they are extremely racist towards other people that are not of the same skin color as themselves. I have some family members that are that way, and it's really heartbreaking to me that I can't change their mind, but I choose to ignore that, and I choose to accept every person regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, and not discriminate against them just based on those things, because we're all the same on the inside. We all have the same length of grave. So we're all 6 feet under the end. We are all human. Like, there's one race, and it's the human race. And we should all be united with that. And I think it's horrible that there are some people who are older, and even some people who are of college age that are racist or think that they are better than somebody because of their skin color. I think it exists in all walks of life, and I would love to change that and change mindsets. But I think the best thing that can be done is for the people who do stand for people of color who are being discriminated against, and do stand for like equality for all. I think that us having a voice is the best way to come.
Thanks, Chloe. Anyone else on the same question?
Yeah, I agree with it. I think she made a great point by saying that racism is definitely taught. Like she said, nobody comes out of the womb racist, and it's definitely taught, definitely being passed down through just system of oral tradition from older generations, I believe. And like Chloe's experience, I've also experienced some people in my family that have a racist background. And there's really nothing I can do to say or change that, because they're just so stuck in their ways. So I can't really do much but accept that. But I do try and make a change when possible. But yeah, I definitely agree with what the points Chloe made.
And someone, if anyone else can contribute, and I think, yes, it's fine for other people who are not panelists to speak if you'd like to. Kirsten did it.
Then I'll go ahead because I asked the question. My name is Julia. I'm a first year student at Hiram. It's great to see everyone here today. It's nice to have some connection. I think that Chloe and Gage made some great points, that it is taught to us. It is a generational thing, but also I think that something that we kind of gloss over as a society is that kind of this racial bias and white supremacy is the foundation of our society in a way. And so we're just constantly kind of intaking these implicit messages that we're not aware of at the surface level, but they contribute towards bias that we may not know that we even have. And so in order to kind of combat this, we have to break down those implicit biases and just look in at ourselves and see, you know, what is my initial reaction to this? You know, I might not explicitly be a racist person, but it's just something that's kind of, you know, entrenched in our society. And it's something that we all kind of have to look inward about and, you know, fight our own biases and our own, what's the word, schemas about race. So I will leave it at that. Sorry if my internet's a little bit spotty. Thanks everyone for being here.
So can I ask one question as a follow-up to this? Okay, so when people hear that it's taught, are we talking about someone being like didactic, like really teaching kids and people that this is what you do and this is how you operate? Or are we talking about people just following the patterns that they see by the people that raise them? Because I hear that a lot, that people say that. Patricia.
I'm raising my hand. Sorry, I don't know if I'm doing it right on Zoom.
You're fine.
So I have a unusual perspective on this. I'm a first year student and I'm also a parent and I have a 12-year-old son I'm homeschooling. We're using a history book and in it, the Native Americans are portrayed as these happy-go-lucky foragers that they're just so backwards. Look at how much longer it took them to come up with villages compared to those Europeans and, you know, the people in the Fertile Crescent. Obviously, they were smarter. I mean, that's not literally said. It's crazy. If you look up on Google, where was the first village? It comes up with, in North America, it comes up, or in the first big city, it comes up with St. Augustine, which the Spanish founded. If you look up on Bing, where was the first city in the Americas? Sorry, not North America, in the Americas. It comes up with, I think it's called Tikal. I think I'm missing a bunch of syllables and vowels, but there's actually a 6,000 or 8,000 year old village foundation, city foundation near Mexico City. North America, South America, we had Native Americans here with big cities. And it's completely glossed over. And so this is where we're taught. Nobody's doing this intentionally. This is just what they were taught. And it's kind of carried over. And I told my son, hey, we bought the book secondhand. We're going to print out a picture of this city in Mexico City and tape it over the picture of the Native Americans and their skins and so backward, because that's just not accurate. So kind of an unusual perspective.
It's a good point, though. It's a very good point. Like bias education system, for sure.
Yeah, I'd also like to kind of add on to that. Like, fortunately for me, like growing up, I was always taught like everybody knows, like treat people the way you want to be treated. And luckily, when I was little, I would visit my grandpa a lot, and he is the farthest thing from a racist as possible because he served in the army and views everyone on that he knew through the army as an equal person. And some of his best friends to this day were people he met through the army that have different racial backgrounds. And like, it doesn't matter who you are, he loves everybody he meets and doesn't care what you look like or what your story is. Like, he just loves everybody he meets and views everyone as equal. And then I believe the nature of this racial problem has been built up for a long time throughout history. And it's really terrible beyond words, but it happened in the past and it's sad we can't change it. But that's why it's like essential now that we don't let history repeat itself and like learn from the problems and mistakes that we made that occurred in the past, so we can focus all our energy and everything into like the future and just building a new generation and society focus on equality, fairness, and respect for everyone.
Thanks, Chris. I think we've got another question. If that's okay, Dee, we'll go ahead and move into our next one. We, as a group of student athletes on a panel here, this is one we just had to get in. You know that we see professional athletes at times take a public stance, and certainly we all think back to Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. But even today, certainly in recent years, we've had these athletes who take a stance and they'll speak out sometimes against businesses, organizations, politicians, and so on. We've seen similar actions even on college campuses and even on small campuses, including here at Hiram. Now, some people believe that athletes should just play and keep the politics out of sport, while others see peaceful protesting as a social responsibility of athletes. As student athletes on our panel, where do you stand on this topic?
So this was also one of the questions that I thought really like was important to me. And then like as an athlete myself, I believe you should always do what is right and lead by example. It is important that athletes across our campus and the world use their platforms in their respective sports to let their voices be heard and like take a stand, because sports is what brings people together from different backgrounds and races. And like, we're all on the same team going towards a common goal when it comes to sports. So why can't we be on the same team outside the lines as well? Like, sports change cultural normalities and society as a whole. And I think that's why we need to continue to push for equality for all. And it takes all of us because we are a team and we're in this together. I mean, if we want change, we have to use our influence as athletes in every way we can. I mean, we are humans, we have feelings, and we believe in what is right, and that we are more than athletes, we are people too.
Thanks, Chris. Others on the panel?
Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. Oh, go for it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I believe that if you're in the spotlight, I believe that you should voice your opinion on what's happening. But then again, I also don't believe it should only be up to athletes. I feel like people are making it a big deal for just athletes and only athletes to come out and speak their opinions. You also should look at the most prominent celebrities, or like even your politicians are not doing exactly what they should be doing also. So I don't understand why it's only on the athletes, even though they do pose a prominent, they're very prominent in society and people do highly respect them. It's not just on the athletes to give their opinions on what should be happening. But if you also look at like some WNBA players like Maya Moore and Angel McCoughtry, they gave up a season just to protest about social injustice. So that's a good thing for them, but it also shouldn't just be up to the athletes. Other people, other famous people should take a stand in addition to the athletes.
Thank you. Okay, so we have another question, sort of in follow-up to this question. So last week, 2 weeks ago, when we had the insurrection at the Capitol building, everybody's familiar with that. We saw people of all walks of life and experiences engaged in that. A lot of duality, folks who live one life in public, and then on the other side, you find out that they're involved in this kind of thing. So one person that was involved, and they've identified him, it was a person who is an Olympic, I believe he's a gold medalist and in swimming, and he was found to be, he was arrested for being pretty violent. So the question is, again, we're calling for the International Olympic Committees want to strip him of his medal. Should we say to that person, you know, people have the right to believe what they want to believe, or is it okay for them to say after the fact, we'll take your medal because you're doing something that's unpopular? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of want to jump in. Sorry if my connection's in and out. I definitely feel that like he should be stripped of his medal, because when you play for a team, you not only represent yourself, but you represent the organization and the team that you're on. And with everything going on, I mean, it's much bigger than that. And if you're associated with something that big, especially the United States Olympics, and you have the United States on your back, I mean, I really don't support the actions behind it. And yeah, I definitely feel like he should be stripped of his medal.
Yeah, I'd also agree, because like when he went to perform those actions, that's like one of the risks you have to take. You have to be willing to give up your gold medal if it's something you believe in. Like he should be stripped of his medal because the actions he took were not supported by everybody in the United States. Therefore, it creates like a division without our nation. And like he should be stripped of it, because that is something you have to consider and risk when carrying out the actions he did. So like for better or worse, you have to live with the choices you make and own up to them.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
agree with this
Chris.
as well. I agree with this as well. I had to log in on my phone. So the violence in general that happened at the Capitol, no matter what stance you take on that, you have to agree that storming the Capitol in almost a terrorist-like way, storming the building that represents the United States, that is a threat against the United States and the Olympics. For this person to be an Olympic gold medalist and go against America in the way that he did, I just think that's horrible in general. And then storming the Capitol for that reason, I think that, yeah, he should be stripped of his medal. I think it's horrible to allow somebody to represent our country that performs these violent acts and storms the Capitol in such a way that they did. Representing our country in that way, I think, is just despicable.
When we first actually got these questions sent to us, I wasn't sure if I wanted to answer this question or not, but I do have a different view on it than everybody else does, because I'm not too sure if he should have his medal stripped or not. I understand that everybody else was saying that, well, he is a representation of this country, and what he did and what he was doing at the Capitol wasn't correct. But I also look at it like the people who are storming the Capitol, that is representation of this country. We can't just ignore the fact that there aren't people who have these beliefs in this country, and that's not what this country has stood for its entire creation. We have to be real with ourselves and admit that we are in a racist country, and that's what this country has stood for, and it still stands for that. Although we have plenty of people protesting, and that might not be what people are learning to move away from, we have to acknowledge that that is what this country was built upon, racism. So I'm not sure if he should or not, just because that's what this country was built on, and we can't just say that that's not what this country stands for, because it is.
Any other comments on that question?
I have something I want to add. I think going off what Haley said, I also agree. I don't know if he should be stripped away from his medal just because it was happened before he stormed the Capitol. And I'm not saying in any way that I support what happened at the Capitol, and in no way say that's okay. It was what he did. But I'm not sure that he should be stripped away from something he accomplished before that this even happened. I think maybe going forward, he shouldn't be able to represent our country, because I believe that that's not, obviously not something I stand for, but I don't think he should be stripped of something he accomplished before he made those choices.
Okay, I'm very sensitive to our time. We have a few more questions. The next question is, let's talk specifically about Hiram. So in terms of race relations at Hiram, as you see it, or you experience it, or you know it, or you observe it, if you were to give Hiram a grade, with A being excellent, that we're doing a great job, everything's perfect, to F being failure, that we're just not doing, we're not where we need to be at all on race relations, what grade would you give and why?
I guess for me, since this was like my first semester in college, I actually thought I would rate Hiram like a B or a B plus. And because like as a liberal arts college, it seems that everyone is not afraid to stand for what they believe in. And I think that is good. It's good because it allows us to respect each other's opinions, even if we don't agree with them. We're in the process of creating like a Black Lives Matter mural, which I think is great, because in the end we are a community here and we should support each other like fairly and equally. And hopefully like the mural will serve as a constant reminder also to have each other's backs no matter what, and change our campus for the better. I also been provided with the opportunity to meet new people of different races and backgrounds. That has helped me become more aware of the times we live in today, and everyone has a different story as well. But to get to the A standard, I feel like we need to hold more events in an attempt to unify the campus as a whole and keep developing a sense of family and belonging.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Chris on his rating. I would also give it around a B plus, and I also agree that the fact that we need to host more events, more centered around unity. But being here in my junior year at Hiram, I've also been exposed to a lot of different cultures, and some races that I've never been introduced to before, and it's been the utmost wonderful experience. And I'm extremely grateful to have that here at Liberal Arts College. But like Chris said, to get to that A, I think we do need to have more events, or just more times, or more things that can include kind of everybody on campus. I know that some people don't really want to include themselves, and that's understandable. But I feel like if we hosted more opportunities for that, I think it'd yield a greater outcome for more diverse relations.
I would also agree with, oh, Haley, go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. You can go.
Okay. I also agree with Chris and Gage. I think that we are definitely around a B plus, and I think we're on the right track here for sure. For me personally, I have never been I grew up in Midland, Michigan, and nobody really knows where that is because we're in Ohio, but it is seriously one of the most bland towns ever. And it's so hard to find diverse people and meet people with different backgrounds than myself. And literally my first week at Hiram, I had met so many people. I'm a sophomore, but my first week freshman year, I had met so many people from different walks of life, people from different states, people from all over the country, all over the world. And I just think that is so cool. I had no idea what college would be like, but since we're such a close-knit community as well as so diverse, I have never felt so accepted and so at home. And it's honestly made me more of an advocate for more diverse communities, and it's made me more willing to speak my voice and stand out. And I hope that other people feel that way as well and speak out against injustice and things that they don't agree with. That's one of the biggest things that has happened to me at Hiram is I've learned how to use my voice for good and to stick up for others that maybe don't have as loud of a voice. And I think I definitely agree that we should do more events like this. We should do, I think, doing this every year, a Candlelight Vigil, and just celebrating MLK Day and talking about what's going on. I think that's the best way to bring awareness to it and make more people involved. And hopefully when COVID is history, we can start to have more events about unity and really get everybody involved on the campus. And as student athletes, I think that is, since our population is very student athlete oriented, I think it is partially our responsibility to get people to get these events, get people to unify against the racial injustice that we face in the world. And I think we're on the right track.
Anyone else? All right, Todd, it's on you.
Yeah, I think one of our questions here, you guys answered in that question. You were talking about the types of things we can do here at Hiram, but to get very specific, sometimes it's great to hear from individuals and just their own point of view on what their commitments are. And the same from our panel as for members of our audience. If you can ask yourself and think about this for a second and start with our panelists answering, what are you personally willing to do now and in your future to make a positive difference to further anti-racism in society? Are there things that your team can do, that you can do? If you can really speak to any specifics, we would appreciate it.
Hey, Todd, I'd like, I know Haley wanted to answer the last question, and I thought it'd be appropriate for her to jump in there, and then we can jump back to that other question. So go ahead, Haley.
Oh, it's okay. I was gonna give Hiram, I don't want to be very negative at all, but I would give Hiram about a C for diversity wise. I mean, I came from a community that was like built on diversity. So I've grown up with people from various different countries. Like I said, I grew up with my school, the school I went to, the high school that I went to, it was considered the ghetto school in my county because we had literally everybody you could think of. But I'm actually pretty proud of that because it made me a better person today because I know people who are Muslim, I know Asian people, I've grown up around so many different kinds of people. And then when I come to Hiram, it's a lot more diverse than I thought, but it's more diverse, like half black, half white. We're doing good on the half black, half white, but we also need to do better on having people from having Asian people, Indian people, Muslims. Like, I think that's where we could do better. Events wise, I think we do a decent amount. I think we do a decent job on holding events that are very inclusive, but it's just a fact of having the students who want to go to those events. Because I'm also an RA and I hold my own events, but the problem is you need kids to actually join in on these events, and that's one thing that's a little bit difficult. But then again, also I think people are willing to, it's a very inclusive community and people are very willing to share their opinions. So I think that's good, but I'd still give Hiram about a C on diversity.
Thanks, Haley, and thanks, Coach Jenkins, for pointing that out. A reminder, just back to our last question now, what are the actions that individuals might take yourself moving forward?
I think as an active member on both the football and the soccer team, like there was something I did at my old high school where like before every game, we had a teammate that kind of like passed away. So we'd tape our wrists and then write a little message on it to kind of honor him and stuff like that. But I think we could also do something in the same nature as that as well. Like maybe wear a little emblem on our jersey or something that represents we're all on the same team. We're in this together. Like you look in the NFL and they have messages on the back of their helmets, or you look on the NBA and they have like sayings on the back of their jerseys. Like we could wear like different t-shirts or warm-ups, like voicing opinions we'd want to say or how we'd want to represent ourselves. But it would also have to be something that the entire team would have to agree on, and that like everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Chris. I was gonna actually bring that up myself. And I also feel that we should kind of follow those models that the NFL and the NBA have kind of put in front of us. I think the biggest thing that we can do, not only as student athletes or athletic programs, just as a school in general, we just need to use our voice just to show the people out there and our fellow students and fellow faculty that that we do care and that we know and that we acknowledge. And I think that a big part of this is just acknowledging and like understanding that this is going on, because that's something that's never been done before. And I feel like there's a big awakening. There's a giant spiritual awakening going on right now. And I feel just, yeah, like I said, just by using our voice, trying to kind of following those models, just putting it out there that, you know, we hear, we do understand, like we're here for everybody.
Okay, so we have, if there no one else wants to answer that, we have Q&A time with BJ and Sammy, coaches. If you have any questions that you want to pose from the group.
Can I add to your last question of what, like, next steps?
Absolutely.
First, from my perspective. So I think, like, as a team, we've talked about things. We talked about Juneteenth. That was that was awesome that we had Zoom at that time, because we watched a small video as a team, and some of my athletes were like, this 3-minute video is more than I've learned in my whole life. So that was awesome. But I think more importantly, my role as a SAC advisor, and I know we've talked about that a lot, and Todd, I'm looking at you. We want to get Unity t-shirts. So just like something that we can do to show our unity on this campus. And maybe that's not what it is, but maybe wristbands or something like that makes a statement, because it does sound like, from what these student athlete panelists are saying, that they want to use their voice on the field, on the court, whatever surface they're playing on. They want it to be known that they're unified and they're taking a stand. So I think that'd be something we discuss as a SAC, and we see where we can go with it. As far as questions, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to add to that too. And the thing is, like with Hiram, if we start something, other schools may follow in our footsteps as well. And that would be something really cool, like a dynamic to see us, like as our campus, even though we're a really small campus, starting something and making it something big, where other schools are following our footsteps and they're like, oh, those t-shirts or wristbands, those are really cool. We should do that too. And I think it would be cool to start like a type of great positive rolling thing going on.
I also wanted to add on to that. I don't think we should limit it to just athletics. I think we also need to have more courses that talk about racial issues. The best class that I'm only a sophomore, but the best class that I've taken is Who and What is an American. And I think we need to have more classes that actually talk about these things, because students say that this is only their first interaction with people of different races or just people of different cultures. So I think we should have more courses about these kinds of issues and not be afraid to talk about it, because it's not something we should be ashamed of. It's something that we need to talk about so that we can create change for the future instead of just guessing about what everybody says.
We had a question about sexual orientation and how it exists in athletics. If any of the panelists can maybe speak about if they've had any interactions in that realm, and if we're doing a good enough job as an athletic department to make sure that everybody feels inclusive in athletics.
I'll go ahead and answer that question. I personally haven't had any experience with sexual orientation in the athletics department, but definitely at Hiram, I would say that sexual orientation, everybody feels like they're included. I don't feel like there's ever been a problem with somebody expressing their opinion or their sexual orientation on campus. So no, I haven't had an experience with that in the athletics department, but Hiram as a whole, I believe we're accepting community for that.
Like Mariah said, I also haven't really experienced anything on sexual orientation. Also, like she said, I feel like Hiram does a very good job of including everybody. And just from my experience, like with all the athletic teams here, everybody's very open and accepting. But I definitely feel like it is something that should be brought up kind of by the faculty and staff in the athletic department more often than the students and athletes themselves.
Were there any other questions in the chat box? I did see one where the question was asking, where are the students of color to be on the panel? I think there was a question about why the makeup of the panel is the way that it is. So anybody want to talk about that, or?
We didn't see that question, Dee. It must have been sent only to you. Okay. What was the question?
The question was just someone wanted to know the makeup of the panel. You know, we have predominantly white students and not many, well, one student of color on the panel. And we did have other students that were invited that weren't able to come, and one person of color couldn't make it tonight. So that was the reason.
So one decided they just didn't want to be a part of it right now, didn't know they'd be available, didn't want to commit themselves. One didn't reply, and then one had a family emergency who was really looking forward to be a part of it, and then she couldn't. So yeah, we sent out the ask.
But I think this is good though to see that students who are not of color have a perspective, because years ago you would never have a panel with students who are white on a diversity panel. So I think this is great, and we need to continue everyone's voice being valued and a part of it. Not that the person who asked the question didn't value that. I think there was just a need to hear, given everything that's in society. So
yeah, absolutely, that's valid.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, Chris, you go ahead.
Got it.
Who's going, me or you? Okay, I'll go ahead. Okay, I was gonna say when I got the email and I like read through it, I sat there for a little bit and I was like, I felt like I'd be almost like a jerk to be a white woman sitting on a Zoom call talking about racism. I was like, that is such a slap in the face. Like, I was like, I can't, like, there's no way I can do that. Like, that sounds like I would be pretty mad if I was in a different position. I feel like I'd be like, well, why is it all white students and one person of color on this Zoom? I can understand how that'd be a little confusing, because for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I'd feel like a jerk. Like, I don't want to do that. But I think it's important, like, this is part of unity, being able to be a white woman and talk about racism and how it's affected me and my friends and family. I think that is important to share with other people, because I'm sure there's a lot of other white people who can relate and they don't know how to help. They don't know how to be a support system for the people of color that are experiencing this injustice and discrimination in the world. And so I think that it might not be the most diverse panel right now because of some people not being able to make it, but having a panel from all different backgrounds, I think that's an important part of being unified. And I would stand with this panel any day. So I think it's awesome to have lots of different walks of life on the panel.
For sure, definitely.
And then to kind of add that, you may see me as like a white male on this panel, like speaking about stuff that might not necessarily affect me, but I'm like driven and passionate to make change because it takes the people that are not affected to take a stand and unify with those that are affected. Because if I just sit around and watch and do nothing, then I'm not doing my part and I'm not helping out. And then on the other hand, if you go to ask my other teammates and friends of different races and backgrounds, if they wanted someone to represent them, they'd be like, yeah, of course I'd want Chris to go represent him. But like when I look at him, I don't just see some random white guy, I see my friend, my teammate, someone that looks out for me. We don't like look at each other's skin color or what our background is, but what we are as humans together, how our relationships are. So, I mean, I just wanted to represent like my football team, my teammates, my soccer team, my teammates, my classmates, and just like everybody in general.
Okay, do we have any, thank you for that, Chris. Do we have any other questions?
I see one question here, and I guess it would be more for Todd, because I'm not exactly sure what the number would be or what the percentage would be close to, but the question is, what percentage of student athletes at Hiram are of color?
Yeah, I saw that too, Coach. I saw that question too, and there was kind of a related question to follow on. What kind of a grade would we get for our professors and coaches? So I'll try to speak to those quickly. I don't know the exact number right now, percentage-wise. I'm going to go find that number out of this meeting. I did know it last year. Pre-COVID, I had looked at those numbers. I know this, you know, historic in America, African-American population, correct me if I'm wrong, please, someone, 12 to 13% is sort of the figure that I see across the nation. I know that Dee has made a comment to me that in the years that she's been at Hiram, it feels like she went from seeing maybe 20 African-American students on campus to as many as 200 or more. And so we feel like Hiram has done a strong job of becoming a more diverse place. And certainly we see in athletics that we are either the most diverse or always one of the most diverse within the NCAC and competition. Our teams certainly have, it seems, greater racial diversity than we see in our opponents when we compete against them. I also think we need to do more work, but I think that's represented in our coaching staff to some degree as well, across different sports, grad assistantships and so forth. But this is a challenge. And I heard President Haney speak to it earlier today on another one of our Zooms, that it's a historic challenge of small private colleges and universities to bring and retain faculty, coaches of color. And so it's an ongoing challenge, but we have to include, you know, persons of color in our search committees. We have to make sure that we're advertising in communities and in places that are going to attract candidates of color. And it has to be something we always focus on. So I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I do believe that in terms of seeking a diverse place to play sport, Hiram is one of your top options in our conference, the NCAC. Yeah, that's the number from last year. I see that number being posted. That's about where we were a year ago. About a third of our students were students of color in the athletic department.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, so this has hopefully been helpful. I mean, it's always good to have the student voices around these topics, which was the purpose of this. I want to first thank the panelists. Judy sent me us a note and she said, let those students know they were amazing. And so thank you guys for bringing yourself, your authentic self. And it was really fantastic to hear what you have to say. So, and as hopefully you know that the faculty and the staff are trying to move the needle and we need your help to do that. And it doesn't matter where you come from or what you look like or whatever, if you have a passion for these topics, these issues, please help. And I know there are a lot of students on that may just be thinking like, how can I get involved? Talk to Todd, talk to your coaches, talk to me, talk to Liz. And I want to give a shout out to Liz Okuma because I forgot to, I hate doing the wrap up at any kind of talk. I hate it because I always forget someone. I left Liz out. Liz, athletics reports to Liz, and a lot of what we do on campus gets done because Liz is pushing the needle. So I think I got Judy and other folks, but somehow I was trying to rush and I missed Liz, but Liz works with athletics. And because of her work, we now have a committee in athletics that works with diversity specifically. She and Todd put that together. And so BJ and Sammy are the ones who are co-chairing that initiative. And so we have pockets of places on campus where the work is being done. And we just have to believe when we pull the dots together that all of us play a role in this initiative, and we're going to make it happen. You know, when I was listening to Nakima speak, and she's talking about being on the front lines and being sprayed in the face, and there's a role for that as well. There's also a role for making sure that education works for folks. You know, that what you're getting is a world-class education. Because if you're not prepared for diversity when you graduate, it is very similar to us giving you a bunch of typewriters and teaching you how to master the typewriter. But when you get into the real world, no one is using the typewriter. The world is diverse, and your education should be an education that gives you a very high comfort level with diversity, no matter where you come from or who you are. You're going to work with people that are older than you, people that are younger than you, people that look like you, people that look like you but don't act like you. You're going to have to be diverse. And diversity is an essential part of a good education. And so that's the purpose of the panel. We want more panelists. We want more conversation. We're going to get through COVID and we'll get together and we'll continue to do this kind of thing. So I want to thank everyone for that. We have a Candlelight Vigil. The title of our talk tonight was Hope and Action. And so we want to believe there is hope for sure, no matter what's happening at the Capitol, at the state Capitol, whatever. At Hiram College, what's happening on our Capitol is we want to have BJ7 happening there, but we want to have hope and we want to continue to work together as a community. So the candle represents the light that we all are. So if you have your candle, we're going to ask you to dim your light or turn your light off and turn your candle on. If you don't have a candle, you can use your cell phone or you can just go dim any way you want to go dim. And I'm going to turn my light off. And I'm going to play something. I got somebody saying something here in the chat box. Okay. I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to play something that is from Dr. King because it is the King holiday. And it's a very short video of him. And I think sometimes he's misunderstood because people just think he's about the I Have a Dream speech. But he was also about self-empowerment. And so if we're ready, I'm going to play that now.
And I say to you this morning, if you have never found something so dear, so precious to you that you will die for it, then you are fit to live. You may be 38 years old as I happen to be. One day, some great opportunity stands before you and calls upon you to stand up for some great principle, some great issue, some great cause. You refuse to do it because you are afraid. You refuse to do it because you want to live longer. You're afraid that you will lose your job, or you're afraid that you will be criticized, or that you will lose your popularity. Are you afraid that somebody will stab you or shoot at you from your house? So you refuse to take the stand. Well, you may go on and live until you're 90, but you're just as dead at the 38 as you would be at 90. The cessation of breathing in your life is but the belated announcement of an earlier death of the spirit. You died when you refused to stand up for right. You died when you refused to stand up for truth. You died when you refused to stand up for justice.
Great. Thank you guys for coming. And thank you again, everyone, for participating.